gee, I wonder if there's gonna be any treasures inside of that particular bank of sand. And also, I received some more coins during the forms of my Luigi's Blue World kind of stuff. During the forms of, well, let's just say in the previous videos ago. So, hey, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? I am Mario here once again, and I'm back for some more yet again for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to more Let's Play of Super Mario Sunshine. I mean, Super Mario Odyssey, I should say, because you might be familiar with this particular outfit for you. And, yeah, because of this though, last time we have managed to able to deal with Luigi's Blue World in the forms of the Snow Kingdom. Despite was rough around the edges though, for that specific performance I managed to perform, especially noticeable just trying to find certain balloons throughout. But today for this episode is the fact that we're going to be still continuing things on with Luigi's Blue World, but except this time around though, we're going to be taking place in the forms of, let's just say, we're on the actual Seaside Kingdom basically. So even then, as usual, we'll do the same stuff over and over again, but except the fact that hopefully we're able to actually max out our coins counter to the forms of, let's just say, 9,999 of them. So, well, in terms of coins though, so even then, and plus if you're probably wondering that we actually got ourselves 42 stars as opposed to 41, well, because recently I managed to able to play this on my own time for a bit, just in case I need to able to complete certain amount of 3D Mario games right until before whenever they, well, God knows when Nintendo decided able to release the next one. So even then, relatively speaking of some way or another, that we'll hopefully try to able to actually do that in my own time per se. But, you know, you probably get the idea about the completionist as far as I'm aware. Although, sure, it's nothing that remarkably rewarding if you manage to do all that specific stuff. If you're trying to go after those golden balloons, you know, attached to Luigi and everything. But we'll point that out whenever we're able to either got it or just straight up discussing on it. So even then, we'll place my balloon just beyond over there. So even then, we can able to know, we'll let someone else able to actually just noticing this. So, anyway though, so today's day is the forms of the 11th of December in 2019. So recently today is the fact that the UK's release of The Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks has been came out for 10 years now. In this case, in the majority of the entire decade. So that's... time flies, doesn't it? Especially because of how the fact that, you know, Christmas is almost getting closer than that time. And, you know, you get the entire relative and all that stuff. So even then, well, speaking of which, actually, is the fact that, well, let's just get into the actual update for this point right about now. When it comes to the forms of the future uploads for Super Mario Odyssey's case, that, until at this point, until the 13th of December, which is specifically this Friday, I'm actually going to take a break for this up until specifically 27th to the 28th of December, because, well, the reason being is because, oh, why? I was off by 1 meter left by that balloon over there, just clearly right next to me. I know where it is, but even then though, that can be pretty strict for my part, because sometimes though, then again, I not exactly know where the balloons are. So, that's just probably my fault for that, stipulation goes. But the fastest way to do this though is the fact that I suggest you're able to use this, capture enemy, so that way you can able to actually get a big burst of speed, then, you know, you're able to get yourselves a balloon like ease. So, there we go then. So, yeah, eventually, because of how the fact that until when it gets to the point until December 27th and December 28th is the fact that we'll definitely have to finish up with this entire Let's Play of Super Mario Odyssey during the forms of at the very end of this specific month, but also the at the end of the year. So even then, just want to classify that, and because of this though, we'll let Sonic will get back into the forms of his continuation Let's Play of Kingdom Hearts Final Mix at one point, because even then, that I'm sure enough he'll get some parts done, but not all of them, mind you, because of how the fact that, well, he was gonna able to show off some bonus things and all that stuff, such as secret boss fights or anything like that. So even then, God knows we'll find out during at some point, but not now though, because even then though, that's a little bit too early to discuss at this point. So, but what we really like to talk about, actually, is the fact that, oh, there's actually a balloon over there. I did not notice it was clearly, you know, right onto that cliffside, so I just want to point that out. So, anyway, since then, about the fact that, you remember I mentioned this before since yesterday, there was actually a State of Play Direct, but also, during the informs of that exact same event, there was also another Direct, but this time around it's another Nintendo Direct, but unfortunately, however, though, it might be seems mainly focusing on ND instead of, Nintendo stuff. Well, I understand because of how the fact that when 2020 is getting closer for that specific time, and especially noticeable how the fact that it needs to have some more, you know, more time to develop with more titles here and there, and all the other shenanigans like this. But, it's just, well, I'll point that out whenever we, discuss more into that, specifically whenever we get to possibly in the Luncheon Kingdom tomorrow, or especially noticeable by the forms of, specifically in this kingdom specifically. So, but even then, let's just get into the actual, the main treatment for the actual discussion, while I was going to be having some struggling, just trying to able to figure out which one of those balloons I need to pop out, such as, well, for instance, this particular person, so even then, we're able to actually find this balloon no matter what. So, yeah, as I mentioned this before, about the fact that recently yesterday is that State of Play Direct PlayStation has been involved since yesterday, and I was actually quite surprised about this, because even then, because of this though, they actually did reveal quite a few surprises here and there, such as, well, first of all, I just want to point things out right away, even though I have got my list with me, so forgive me about the forms of, did I just seriously manage to able to do not know where every single items are? Or, in this case, by the forms of the actual balloon is located? I don't know. Sometimes I always get confused by that. So even then, the first thing they actually did show off with State of Play PlayStation Direct is kind of a surprising one, actually, because you remember in the forms of September 20th that the PC version as well as the Nintendo Switch versions of Untitled Goose Game was actually being released for about almost 3 months from now. But it turns out this, for this particular point, is that the PlayStation 4 version also gets its, well, Untitled Goose Game treatment as well. Now, I think the only difference is, and I think that could be also the same applies for the Xbox One version as well. So, even then though, the actual release date for those two versions around the same day, around the same time rather, is going to be on December the 17th of 2019. So even then though, that will be on, 6 days for now. So even then though, that if you have, you know, PlayStation Network, cards and all that stuff, then save it up, because that way you can able to actually get your hands on, you know, Untitled Goose Game for the PlayStation 4/Xbox One. So yeah, it's pretty cool though, but I have heard of it though, but I haven't really get a chance to play that game, to be honest with you, because of, well, I'm just more into the forms of Nintendo related stuff, you see. So even then, okay, so it's not in here, but I definitely noticed there was one over there. No! Oh, that's the second time I'm always off by a little bit amount of meters off from that specific balloon. Oh, jeez, that was literally so close. We'll try that again and give this another shot. I know exactly where that is, so hopefully we'll try that again. So, another game they actually did showcase off with the State of Play, as far as the forms of that specific State of Play game is concerned, and that is the forms of Spellbreak, which, I've seen the actual gameplay of it. It almost kind of reminds me like Fortnite somehow, but except this time around though, it's just like, I don't know if it's gonna be the exclusive title or something like that for that specific PlayStation 4 system, or apparently though, they actually get ourselves the actual closed beta at some point in spring 2020. So, yeah, I think that makes it obvious, even though I haven't really exactly looked it up on that specific game too much, because then again, it's not my interest. Well, usually in some games I was really interested of for some reason. Well, some of them I wasn't really particularly keen on, to be honest with you. Just because of how the fact that it's more likely a different cup of tea or something like that. So, And another game they actually did show off is the fact that it's actually very creative in concept, because it's like a combination of most other genres, specifically made in dreams, or to be more accurate, dreams as what's known for the title. And the actual release date for it is going to come out in during the forms of Valentine's Day, in during the forms of 2020, and it's also the same day as when Sonic the Hedgehog live-action movie was about to be releasing too. So, even then though, as far as what I've seen a trailer of it, it's like a combination of somewhat of a different game genres somehow, such as, for instance, like, I don't know exactly what the actual gameplay footage is like to be, but even then, we got stuff like, some sort of like the racing game, a 3D platformer, and especially noticeable with some sort of like a beat-em-up game, as well as the actual skateboarding game, 2D platformer, side-scrolling platformer, and possibilities were endless, I'm telling you, and especially noticeable with the top-down perspective, and it seems kind of interests me, but at the same time, I wasn't gonna pick it up, honestly, just because of how the fact that, well, I wasn't really into the actual franchises, just to begin with, to be honest with you, because of, well, it's not my kind of thing. So even then, it looks interesting, so even then, though, that is just gonna come out on the PlayStation 4 during, you know, next year in Valentine's Day, as I said before, so even then, though, I'm sure many people seem to be able to give this one a try. So, and of course, another game they actually did, showcase off with, State of Play, and that is Super Lumbio, which I do apologize for the actual pronunciation for that name, but basically what that game is all about is basically you're able to exploring through corridor to corridor syndrome, and what happens is the fact that every time you're able to interact with certain objects, or even especially noticeable with the actual depth of it, they can definitely tell about the fact that you could able to potentially try to create something bigger, or especially noticeable with the actual creativity, which is the actual depth of it, which is pretty cool in concept all in all, but that again is not my interest, to be honest with you. So even then though, I think the actual release date for it is actually going to come out in during, I can't remember what day it was, to be honest with you, because that again, I haven't really looked upon that much of it though. So, and the next game they actually did announce for State of Play Direct, and that is a kind of a cool virtual reality game for the PlayStation and Fury, which appears to be by the forms of Paper Beast, which you're actually going to be taking control of the Paper Beast all by yourself, and basically you can able to explore around the whole, you know, the giant environment here and there. Oh, I realized one of those balloons is actually onto that specific handle part. Oh jeez, I did not expect it. I seriously did not expect to see how this will turn out, so we'll try that again. I know exactly where that is though, it's just that, well, I just did not know at first, so hopefully we'll try that again. Thankfully though, it wasn't nearly as rough around the edges as the forms of how it does it in the Snow Kingdom, so luckily though, because of how the fact that, well, if you know what you're doing, then you will be okay. But it's just well, if you really want to go for a challenge by simply going after, you know, whole kinds of balloons here and there, well, good luck for that, because otherwise then you will never know until you're able to actually just decide to able to noticing this. So, anyway though, so let's go ahead and just do with this next balloon here, so even then we'll able to actually just, well, you know, just trying to do that then. And, that particular game of Paper Beast is actually going to be coming out in the first quarter in 2020 for, you know, the PlayStation virtual reality thing. So yeah, that's pretty obvious for that point. And also after that, it's actually kind of surprising because I've already mentioned about this before during the forms of the Metro Kingdom's Luigi's Blue World, is the fact that once again, they did manage to show off Kingdom Hearts 3 DLC Remind once again, but except this time around though, it actually reveals, well, the actual release date is pretty much the same as from before, especially noticeable with the actual gameplay details here and there. But the biggest addition to that though is the fact that not only do you able to actually purchase the actual separate, well, they actually have like two purchasable options this time around, which one of them contains, well, option number one is basically just Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind DLC itself, and another version which actually contains the same DLC, but in addition with the concert video, ever since during the forms of the concert that's already been up ever since during a couple of moments ago. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And usually it contains like 19 tracks in a concert video, which is pretty cool though, especially because, well, honestly, because of how the fact that it's you know, the series has been super awesome even to this day. And also it tells you about the fact that how what content you might get during the forms of the Remind DLC itself. So even then though, stuff like additional story, Remind, and limit cut episode, and 13 new boss fights as far as I'm aware, the secret episode and a boss battle involved, data gathering feature, and slideshow feature, premium menu, which I think it could be potentially being more likely possibilities to solve something like that, but I wasn't really sure on that. So, and also during the forms of that specific moment's notice, I think there was actually a diverse difficulty settings and gameplay challenges or something like that, or I don't know. It's hard to able to predict about some of these new features they are able to actually include those specific stuff because of, well, the actual release date for it, it's gonna be still on the 23rd of January in 2020 during the PlayStation 4 version, and the Xbox One version might actually release that at some point in February next year. So, and aside from that though, I think there was actually a main story update here and there during the forms of the actual concert video with it or something. Like, the main story update, new abilities that has been added, or even Keyblades, or with Kiba and Oblivion Keyblade, as well as the new form changes have been added, and in-game requirements for in Kingdom Hearts 3 to acquire these Keyblades and all that stuff, and I think that's about it, basically, so even then. And finally, they actually got themselves the actual price tags for it, such as, well, specifically in the UK version, that the actual country we still live in right now, the actual price tag for that specific DLC, it probably cost about like £25, which is exactly the same price as the forms of how it does it on Mega Man 0/ZX Legacy Collection. So, if I were you, mind you, for this specific point, whenever it gets to 2020, I'll definitely have to purchase the £50 PlayStation voucher thing before I'm able to purchase not only the game compilation, but also the Kingdom Hearts 3 DLC stuff. So even then, though, that's the only thing I need to point that out. I'm not exactly sure what version I might actually go for with the actual two options with some Kingdom Hearts 3 DLC content, but I'll find out soon enough until specifically when it gets to in 2020 at some form or another. So, and another game they actually did announce is a new Predator game known as Hunting Grounds, which is kind of interesting, although at the same time, well, I've heard of Predator before, but I haven't really watched that much in terms of Predator, to be honest with you, because, well, not much else to really say about it here, so even then I'll pass it on that one. And another game they actually did announce for State of Play, and that is actually another game by Square Enix, mind you. I was expecting if they're going to be bringing some, you know, some new updates specifically for Final Fantasy VII Remake, but it turns out it was actually a new game in development, but this time it's actually involved around Babylon's Fall, so even then though, that's kind of an interesting fact. And after that, something you might actually know something if you might be familiar with the Resident Evil series. Now, you know how the fact that the recent remake of Resident Evil game, which is of course Resident Evil 2, this managed to able to actually came out exactly the same month as the forms of how it does on Kingdom Hearts 3, and during that specific stuff for that particular year so far. Turns out that Resident Evil 3 is also getting its remake treatment, but except this time it's going to be on 2020's release. Or to be more accurate, the 3rd of April 2020's release. So, that's pretty interesting, and it seems the actual rumors is actually true, because even then, and although I'm pretty sure enough though, once again it doesn't seem the light of day during the forms of the Switch releases or something like that. Unless, well, it still usually becomes available on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC and stuff like that. So, for those of you the Resident Evil fans out there, well, you might be able to looking forward to the remake. So, yeah, more power to you for that specific stuff. But I'm not overly a massive, Resident Evil fanatic, but I've heard of it though. But it's just that not my interest, to be honest with you. So anyway, and also another thing with the state of play is the fact that, well, they're able to actually discuss upon the 25th anniversary of the PlayStation itself, which is pretty cool though, especially when, after all, that the original PlayStation system has been out for about 25 years and stuff like that, which is still impressive even to this day, especially because of how the fact that that particular, well, PlayStation company first began during the forms of 1994 and stuff like that. So it's very impressive all in all. But hey, at least I can't wait to see what's up next for PlayStation, specifically PlayStation 5 in the future. It's kind of a shame they don't seem to able to show off the PlayStation 5 just yet though, but I'm pretty sure it'll able to actually show this off in during the forms of at some point in next year's E3, I'm presuming. So, God knows, it will be a possibility, I'm telling you, it will be a possibility. So, and I suppose the final thing they actually did showcase off with State of Play, and as it appears to be another game in development, and it appears to be developed by Sucker Punch, which also did done, I would say, Infamous series or something like that, but it usually calls it Ghost of, I can't pronounce his name very well, I do apologize for that again. Tatsuima, which, again, I do apologize for the actual pronunciation enthusiastic, but either way, though, it's just my, enthusiastic about pronunciation stuff. We're able to actually just, hard to pronounce sometimes. But, you get the idea. Although, it only just shows up the actual main, not the actual game footage just yet, though, because I think it actually continues that particular footage at some point, because it does say to be continued. Because the reason being for that is because they will eventually show that off during the forms of the Game Awards specific montage or something like that. So, speaking of the Game Awards, actually, it will be up in during the forms of tomorrow. So even then, I'm really looking forward to that. Especially noticeable, I'm really looking forward to mentioning about that whenever I get back into this game, specifically when we get to the Luigi's Blue World in Bowser's Kingdom. So, that will be the massive appreciation about that specific stuff. I don't know what else I need to say about this, honestly. I think it's actually pretty okay direct, well, when it comes to the state of play. I mean, obviously the highlights for me, though, is of course the Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind DLC, which I'm so looking forward to it, especially now how the fact that I don't know if that particular game will able to get itself a separate packaging with, specifically, whenever you're trying to able to have, like, the full game plus DLC included. But, I don't know. It's hard to able to predict for this point right now because of, 2019 is getting close towards the end, especially noticeable for the very end of the entire decade of, the 2010s era. So even then, though, that makes it a little bit more consumption to this specific point, worth noting for. So, yeah, you probably get the actual drill for this point. So, as you can see right there, I managed to able to start playing through Luigi's Blue World in Seaside Kingdom, and that was actually a pretty good run in comparison to the forms of how it does it on the Snow Kingdom, because, well, thankfully though, the actual depth of it, or even the actual draw distance, is actually way more clearer than the forms of how it does it on the Snow Kingdom, because in the Snow Kingdom, it just gets like, a huge chunk of portions of that specific snowstorm, so even then I just want to classify that. So anyway though, and yeah, as I mentioned this before, there's not much else I could really talk about this at this point. Well, I did manage to mention about quite a new announcements during the forms of, thanks to the forms of the State of Play Direct just recently happened during the forms of yesterday, which I was pleasantly surprised by this, especially noticeable how the fact that some fans were super looking forward to able to— No, I did not meant to purchase that! Oh, I'll have to go for that, aren't I? Well, I did manage to fail for that specific moment whenever I try to purchase, 10 power moons in each kingdom, but one exception, which is right now. And sadly to tell you, is that I actually failed my task. So, yeah, that's kind of stinks. But, oh well, we'll have to go for that anyway, so even then I will have to accept that. But yeah, that sucks. But yeah, especially because that most other Resident Evil fans out there were expecting to able to be super excited for Resident Evil 3 Remake is now happening, which I'm sure most other fans were able to expect to see that coming. So, even then, to be expected for that point. So, and then I will mention about more details about the forms of ND World for Nintendo Direct, but maybe during tomorrow, because there's not much else I can talk about that apart from my, I won't say my huge criticism with that specific, the actual emphasis on ND World presentation for the actual Nintendo Directs like this. Although I'll point out on during the forms of tomorrow's video for sure. I mean, yeah, that'll be definitely my, my biggest criticism, or even the actual ranting parts for, specifically for the majority of the time, because, well, I still really can't stand, like, doing, ranting and all that stuff, but I'll point it out right about now, during the forms of tomorrow, but then again, we'll have to point that out at some form or another, so... But yeah, that can wait, especially because of how the fact that, well, relatively speaking, that we basically pretty much almost nearly towards the end of this game, basically, so... Anyway though, so anyways, let's go ahead and, change it to a different costume, and, we'll able to actually use a different costume at some point in the next video. Now, I think we should probably change it into, let me have a look at these, costumes or what have you. Let me think here. Well, I was gonna able to dress up as one of those, the Brutals over there, but I thought that maybe, just maybe, well, we basically already, seen these kinds of costumes like these before, but I figured that we might actually go ahead and, well, change it back to Wario, I suppose. But then again, because we've already shown off, Luigi's outfit and Waluigi's outfit, but now we can able to actually dress up back to Wario's costume for sure, because even then, well, who better, well, Wilma's able to do that without even, like, well, it's hard to explain about this sometimes because, well, not much more I can tell about that. So, actually, before I end this video off, there was actually that one particular item purchase I have not even purchased upon. And that is, of course, the next new costume, and somehow my game seemed to lag a little bit. But usually it doesn't drop that much though, it still runs like 60 frames per second, although except in my capture card's case, we're pretty much gonna be still stuck with 30 frames per second sadly. So let's go ahead and purchase, no matter what though, let's purchase this, and as far as everything else, I think we are basically done here. Well, apart from, I believe we've only got about 5 costumes, or 6 costumes if you will, so that we can able to actually just collect every single costumes as we needed. But, well, not for me though just yet though, because, well, we have to save that for later. So, anyway, join me next time when Let's Play Super Mario Odyssey in Luigi's Blue World, as that we are now doing this again, but this time in Luncheon Kingdom, so see you then.